Hi, can you introduce yourself for us?
Sure. My name's Danya Traboulsi, and I'm a resident from the University of Calgary.
And can you tell me about your poster here and your research?
Sure. So this poster is basically, we did a systematic electronic review looking at whether the measurements and the modality used for looking at UV exposure, how reliable and how accurate they are, and whether one would be better than another for kind of predicting things in the future, like the risk for skin cancer and what types of skin cancer people are prone to. And basically what we found is there's really not a lot of research that compares all of the different modalities together, and specifically the modalities we looked at were surveys, so people answering questionnaires about how much sun exposure they've had in the past, how many sunburns they've experienced. Other things we looked at were dosimeters and the various forms, so electronic, chemical, and biologic, and whether those are accurate, and they're more of a quantitative assessment of UV exposure. And then we also looked at diaries, so how people describing what their sun habits and sun exposure habits are. And then lastly were satellites and mapping. And basically what we found, like I said, there's not really any study that compares all of those modalities to one another in the same setting. But they did find that all of them are valid and accurate in their own way and when used appropriately. So you have to kind of tailor the way you're measuring things to the right scenario. So models and mapping aren't great for an individual approach and looking at one specific person's exposure to UV light. You'd be better off going with maybe a dosimeter or surveys, diaries, and that sort of thing. But they also found that combining the modalities actually makes for a better result and a more accurate result. So if you do the quantitative version with a dosimeter and you combine that with a diary that the patient or person being studied fills out, you actually get a better reading of the actual UV exposure because you're documenting their habits. Did they put sunscreen on while they were using the dosimeter? Were they wearing protective clothing? So it's interesting in that standpoint because it shows that they're all accurate. You just need to tailor it to what you're doing.
And so what do you hope that dermatologists will take away from your findings?
I think hopefully someone will be stimulated to maybe look into this more and see if we can compare them all in the same setting. And also just that, what we're doing in our offices and even for family doctors, asking patients how much sun exposure they've had, how many blistering sunburns is actually quite accurate for getting a gestalt of what their risk will be in the future and actually what types of skin cancers. If they're a farmer and they've just kind of had continuous sun exposure, they're more prone to squames, and if they've had kind of multiple vacations throughout the year and they live up in Montreal where they don't get as much sun during the winter, they're more prone to kind of a melanoma and basal cell cancer. So it just kind of reaffirms what we knew in that sense. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.